Hi, and welcome to Data Demystified, the podcast where we look beyond the buzzwords to find value in marketing technology, AI, and data for marketing. My name is Kevin van Kalkeren, and in this episode, we'll dive into the overpopulated MarTech landscape and how that impacts your view of your customers. Now, maybe start without technology. Maybe first take a minute to think about what your image of your customers is. Now, if you have them in mind, then ask yourself, where does that image stem from? How do you got that image? Is that because you're very empathetic maybe and you just could place yourself in the shoes of your customers very well? Maybe you've thought of the ideal customer with your team or in your head. Maybe you know a couple of them. Maybe you have friends that actually resemble your ideal customers, or maybe you are your ideal customer and you build your business from your own needs. Now, maybe there's tools you used, surveys, marketing, research, different advertising platforms that told you about what the best audience was for your advertising or social posts. Maybe you've talked to actual clients, and that image you realize probably is a combination of those various finding places of data points, be it explicit or be it implicit. So we don't really have one customer view in an Excel sheet, right? We have a mental picture of them that's made out of our experiences throughout our career and maybe careers of our entire staff. Now, then ask yourself, how many tools does your company use that produce data? There might be 2, there might be 4, there might be 5, not even operational tools, just your marketing tools. And then how many of those are transparent in how they come about those conclusions about your customers? So if you make advertise, for instance, on Google or Meta platforms, you can tap into the wealth of data they have quite indirectly. You can make your advertisements, but you tap into their interests, maybe what they visited before, age, gender type of indications, maybe some political interest in some platforms. That's really it. They are very much demographical, static data. And a lot of that is built on data points they've gathered across people using their services, maybe viewing the social posts, doing Google searches. So again, that's a very biased, very fragmented way to look at individuals because we do more than just search on Google. We do more than click on social posts. So because that image of your customers is quite fragmented, built up of various different sources, and because we might use a lot of insights from different platforms, you have to ask yourself the question, are the interests of your demographics and Instagram audience the same that the people that visit your website? Are they the same profiles that get profiled in Google Analytics, and are those the same profiles that get profiled, for instance, in Google Ads, right? So if one individual was to be found in 3 different platforms, would they tell the same story about those individuals? And those are external platforms, but let alone your internal platforms. So if you were to map those audiences from those advertising platforms or analytics to your call center, if you speak to your customer support reps, to your sales reps, do they have the same ideas about your customers, or are they also seeing different facets of each customer? And if you tie them all together, does that give you the same image you have in your own internal information as well as you have in the external tools? So keeping in mind that what we do as individuals, as human beings, is we make narratives in our head. We're sensitive to narrations, to stories. We build theory implicit in our minds when we think about our customers. And those theories are informed by all those scattered data points. We didn't get one briefing on our customers and work from there, right? We build this image up, and that does impact the way we do analytics, and it builds our biases. And that's good to keep in mind when you talk about this very overpopulated, overcrowded MarTech landscape. So before we talk about how can we solve this, how do we go about actual data-driven approaches to our customers, first, let's talk about buzzwords, because in every episode, we'll also take a look at a common belief or a buzzword and see what holds up and what doesn't. So today we have a question from a listener.
Hi, Kevin. I really enjoyed listening to your previous episode, and I have a question about what you discussed there. You mentioned that customer journey maps often overlook that those customers aren't just your customers. So I was wondering, what do you think of the concept of a 360-degree customer view?
Yes, the 360 customer view, the 360 customer data lake or whatever, an integrated set of data points to a profile user from acquisition to current portfolio of products to next best actions typically. What do we serve them next? How do we upsell, cross-sell, retain? Which is great as an ambition, but rarely achievable for most companies. This does require, I think, enterprise-grade integrations typically, especially when you're talking a more diverse landscape and a diverse way of serving your companies and customers. Now, depending on how you do business, that might not necessarily be a bad thing, right? You don't have to have this full view if you have a very simple journey or you have a product that kind of sells itself. So always ask yourself, what are the insights I need to achieve my goals and my next goals? And build from that. So that way you slowly accumulate useful insights that create value case by case, rather than start with a big bang data dump that never gets done in practice. And should it always involve data beyond your customer status? Maybe. You can take into account demographical data to give more context, join them on zip code from a census data set, for instance. But there's a difference between trying to have a customer view to best service the customers you have and building a data set that seeks to present the most accurate path to a purchase. The latter needs to know what others that customer considered before buying from you. The former might need that less. So take it case by case and build your customer view from there. So we've talked about that theory of mind we develop across those different data sources about our customers, and we've talked about the 360 customer view definition. Now, how do we build towards that? And one of the questions you then encounter at first, I think, is, do we build from a different source, one source, or multiple sources? And I don't think there's a one to rule them all solution. You have too many channels typically in your marketing mix. But if you try to combine those different MarTech tools you have into one overview, then at least look for options they have, features they have, where you can export their data on a granular level, user level, session level, interaction level, or if you can only export that on an aggregated level. Because we cannot really combine data sets that talk about daily interactions into one customer view. So, and if you cannot do that now, then take it into account for later. Maybe there's premiums you can pay for a tool to do that later on if you need it, or maybe cut your losses, pick for what works for now, but keep in mind that this is going to be a black box, a blind spot in your customer journey analytics from here on out. And now that I've mentioned customer journey analytics, you should probably start from there. Start by what you know about your customer journey, which I spoke about in the previous episode, by the way, and find your biggest blind spots, the ones that create the biggest value, or maybe the take the biggest value away. What are the places where we don't know a lot about, but might lead to the biggest drop-off? And if you find that spot, you can find the right tool to solve that particular blind spot you have. So keep track of what you know and what you don't know. And a good way to do that is just pick a database, pick an Excel sheet, pick whatever type of tool. But make sure that every piece of data you accumulate is tracked somewhere in another place than just the tools you have scattered around. There can be trivia about your customers, a compendium, maybe reports or findings from an A/B test. Make sure those things are logged somewhere to build your own customer view. And if you cannot do that on a very granular level, integrated with all those tools, then make sure that you at least have some kind of compendium about your customers built up from all those nuggets of information you've got. Now, as with all projects, one of the key factors is alignment. Even with the greatest CDPs, customer data platforms in the market, we often fall back into our siloed analysis. So you might have all the perfect data lying around in your data lake, but sales has their own analytics, marketing has their own analytics, customer success has their own analytics, and that means that we still use a very fragmented approach when looking at our customers. So you have to make sure you align across those teams. Who are our customers? What are our best customers? What is their worth to us? And what is our worth to them? And then you might go into slicing that data into useful portions for each team, but only after you've defined those important parameters for your customer view. Now, if you're looking to sound smart at your next social gathering, here's a quick insight you can just casually throw out at the drinks table on your next conference. I think the biggest problem in fact-based marketing is not that we have incomplete data, but our own confirmation bias. Now, what that means is that, yes, we have maybe some data issues, challenges sometimes, but overall, in this day and age, there's plenty of data to find. Rather, what we do is, as humans, we're primed to look for information, data points that confirm what we think. We like to confirm that A/B tests do well, rather than actually look at what's going on. So if we want to be really fact-based, that means we have to kind of switch off our innate drive to confirm what we think is right, what we think are doing, what our actions actually impact, and find the real truth. All right, so we've talked about how your customer view, your theory of mind came to be. We've talked about that 360 customer view and how you get towards that point. Now what? What do we take home? So use tools for what they're good at, but don't rely on a scattered customer view for strategic decisions. And if you find you're unable to integrate datasets from those tools enough, then look for other ways to fill in those gaps. For instance, you could schedule customer interviews to check the hypotheses you get from different tools, for instance, verify them at the source rather than this scattered look. Thank you for listening to Data Demystified. If you'd like to know more about these topics, data for marketing, AI, MarTech, be sure to subscribe wherever you find your podcasts, and I'll see you next time.